perfectly.
Here we are.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Silvers, and I am with my dear friend, Arleen Milian, who is a life vision strategist, and her modalities are plentiful, and one of them happens to be the application of forgiveness into every area of your life. And Arleen is somebody who is a sought after life coach, and she's a mom, a single mom, and brought up 3 children on her own. Well, she earns a multiple 6-figure income, which is important for you to know that with freedom, with forgiveness, with compassion, with authentic embrace of who you are, anything is possible. So I wanted to just share that with you. She's also working, she's in development of a documentary about her healing journey as a Cuban exile. And so she's somebody who's so near and dear to my heart. We're actually born on the same day. And we have a lot of synergy, and she's just so brilliant and heart-centered and soul-centered. And so I wanted to share her with you for this master series online show that I'm producing, because I truly, genuinely, wholeheartedly believe that freedom is the key to living a prosperous, compassionate, empowered life. Without it, you are imprisoned by your jealousies and your resentments. And that is like pouring a cup of poison for someone else that you continually drink. So please welcome Arleen.
Wow. Thank you, sister.
You're so welcome.
Just sitting here, just listening to you, I'm like, okay, just receive that. Just receive that. Just receive that, Arleen.
Yes.
It's so easy to, well, for me, it could be so easy to think like, oh my gosh, like, really? Am I all those things?
You are all that and more.
And so, yes, I am all those things. And it took a tribe to help raise my children. I always like to share that.
Can you show everybody that picture, that beautiful picture of you with your babies? Look at that. Look at that. Such a young mama with 3 little ones. Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah, I took a tribe. I had my first child at 21, my second child at 22.
Wow.
They're 16 months apart. And then the baby at 25. So thank God for mamas. Thank God for grandmamas.
Yeah.
Thank God for tias that are aunts in English.
Yes.
In my culture, the Cuban culture, the family does. The family support is very, very much part of the motherhood journey, that's how I was raised.
Yeah.
I have, people often ask me, I'm an only child, and I had my mom, my tia, my mom's sister, that's like my second mother, my grandmother, and 3 great aunts.
Wow.
6 women took to raise this child. I always say, like, God knew I was too much for one, so he had to send like a whole tribe.
Oh my God.
And I've learned so much from each and every one of them, and I'm very blessed that I had a tribe of very strong, resilient women to help me raise my children.
Mm. Well, you are a power of example. You're very strong, and you're also you're tender and strong, and you're so authentic. That's one of the you have so many qualities that I love about you, and authenticity is something that I've often just marveled at, your ability to be so authentic and vulnerable. So how did you get to that place where you were able to be that way?
A lot of pain.
Mm.
It took a lot of pain for me to finally become humble enough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very proudful Cuban woman.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and it took me to hit a spiritual, physical,
Mm-hmm.
financial bottom
Mm-hmm.
in 2006,
Mm.
because I definitely was not described as a vulnerable, authentic woman any time before then.
Right.
As a matter of fact, my whole life, when people ask me, being that I was raised in LA, like, why didn't you ever go into acting? I've said several times, I'm like, I'm one of the best actresses I've ever met, because if you, if you, no one knew no one knew what happened in my childhood.
Mm.
No one knew what was going on during my teenage years. No one knew what was going on with me throughout my 20s and 30s.
Mm.
I finally hit my bottom at 36.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are always happy and outgoing and you look put together, then no one will ever know what's really going on inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so what got me to the place of finally being willing to take off the armor, because it was so heavy,
Yeah.
was when literally my life fell apart. And at the time, I didn't think my life had fallen apart,
Mm.
because I'm so good at masking and doing the tap dance so you don't see what's
Mm-hmm.
going on.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back now, I was spiritually dead. But on the outside, you would see this, put together single mom driving her Volvo, uh, SUV, dropping off her children, private schools. And when I started coming out to friends of mine in my inner circle about what was going on, and I started doing the inner work, many people were like, Arleen, you're such a dramatic Scorpio. Like, stop it. Like, literally I had a friend tell me, like, you're so dramatic. Like, basically, this is not really going on. Like, what are you talking about? And someone said, like, a year after, they said, I had no idea what was going on in your life.
Mm.
Such a good job fooling all of us that we all were jealous of you. Because
Mm.
I was kind of like, Sex and the City was on during that time. So I
Uh-huh.
would always say, like, that I was a mosh, what is it, a hybrid of Samantha, Carrie, and a little sprinkle of Charlotte.
Uh-huh.
So my friends always viewed me as someone that was, just called the shots. She was a single mom, but she still had her sense of woman and sensuality and outgoing. And so I did a great job at not being authentic until it wasn't sustainable any longer.
Mm-hmm.
It was not sustainable. And so in 2006, I became willing to
Mm-hmm.
surrender that I didn't know who I was at 36.
Mm.
I didn't know who I was. And I started doing the inner work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
So
I'm at 51 hearing you describe me as an authentic, vulnerable woman. Yay.
yeah,
Yay,
well
inner
done.
work. Yay, inner work. Shout out to inner work. I'm going to do a plug for inner work. Try it.
And it's a journey. I mean, the thing that's always so fascinating to me about we women and is that we're so damn together. And when we move somewhere along the 30s and into the 40s, so in Native American traditions, 40 is when all of the pathways come together And there's an awakening, another awakening, like I think every decade there's an awakening. And my experience with clients, as well as myself and friends, is that there's something that occurs when you hit your 30s. And you may not totally be cracked open and willing to do that inner work. Some people are, they're ahead of the curve. And then it's just something about moving into that space, 33, 34, that begins to have inside of a woman, like, okay, so I'm more than X, or I thought I really liked this, and I don't really like that, or I'm not really sure I want to do this anymore. Like there's just this awakening of many awakenings that happens. So I know you have a phenomenal story about your past coming from Cuba. Are you willing to share just a piece of it and how it led you to this place of practicing forgiveness on such a deep level?
Absolutely. I'm game, whatever you want to ask. But if you don't mind, you touched on something about 30s. One of the first things that I realized that I needed to forgive myself, that forgiveness first needed to start with me, is forgiving myself for not having that moment of clarity until I turned 36. I beat myself up for so long for being a single mom, for not having the tools that I wish I would have had when I first became a mother. So it's interesting that you say about that age, in the 30s, because I beat myself up so much that I hadn't reached the goals that I had set for myself in my teens. I was a girl that was going to graduate, go to UC Santa Barbara, major in communications, become an anchor woman like Connie Chung, and I was going to travel and probably not have children or get married until maybe my mid 30s.
Right.
So when none of that happened, I didn't choose that journey. My friends at the time were really shocked. Like, wait a minute, what? You out of everyone was the one that was like, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to get married until, I've lived this life. So it was in my late 30s is when I started doing this work. And I realized that I carried so many resentments towards myself for not doing it the way I had planned to do it in my teens.
I get that.
And that awareness was like, wow, like I've been carrying that around with me throughout all my 20s and my 30s, that I didn't do it the way I wanted to do it, and I didn't do it right. So that's really where my journey on forgiveness starts. So now back to Cuba.
That was wonderful segue, and it makes perfect sense. It's that misperception, right? The dreams that we have when we're teenagers. And I mean, I had dreams when I was a teenager. I was exposed to W magazine, and when I was 16, I got it as a present from one of my cousins, and that's the life I wanted. And I had a Rolls-Royce Corniche on my bulletin board, and I was going to do that, right? So we all have these dreams, and I think dreams are great because I think dreams pull us forward. They're like bread. When we look back at the breadcrumbs along our path, we get to see that in spite and despite of whatever winding turns we've taken, it's there all along. So it makes sense to me what you're talking about. And to have to have 3 children under the age of 5 by the time you're 25, I mean, that is a huge life journey. Just that's huge. So yes, I understand, and I'd love to hear about what you experienced with Cuba or Cuba.
Cool. Gosh, when I went back in 2016. All right, so let's see. How can I make this as succinct as possible? Because I'm a storyteller, and so
Yeah.
I want to answer this in a way where I could paint the picture without having us here for the next 40 minutes. In 2015, I decided it's time for me to go back. That I got that intuitive hit. Spirit was like, it's time. My mother passed away in 2007. And so the thought started as that little flicker of desire of going back to Cuba, taking my mother's ashes back. I was sharing with someone who is in filmmaking, who's a friend of mine, that I was starting to do the paperwork to go back to Cuba and take my mother's ashes back. In the course of the conversation, I mentioned to him a couple of stories about my family and my journey to the US. And he looked at me and he said, Arleen, you have to film this. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you have to film this. And I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go back to Cuba to meet the family that I haven't seen since I was 2 and take my mother's ashes back. And he goes, your story needs to be told. And, you know, I was like, okay, yeah. And for the next several months, that kept on haunting me. Your story needs to be told. Your story needs to be told. And that, it just started festering, like my spirit, like it just was not letting me rest. And so I called him up and I said, okay, you know, you're a filmmaker. I don't know a thing about film. And so we started that journey in 2015.
Wonderful.
And then in 2016, in May of 2016, I did a fundraiser, which that was hard to ask people if they want to partner with me on this journey without feeling like they were funding my vacation to Cuba. And so I had to make sure that everything was very clean, that the records were very clean. And so we raised the money. And so the first week we filmed. I hired a cinematographer and an associate producer. And we went to Cuba. The first week I filmed, and that's where all the funding went to. And then the second week, my cinematographer and my associate producer, they go back to the States, and then my oldest 2 fly in. And so the second leg of the time I was there was not funded by anyone else, but by me. And it was a life-changing experience. And it was, I think if I would know today how much that trip was going to take out of me, I don't know if I don't know. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was painful. It was healing. It was painful. It opened up my eyes and my heart in ways that I just never thought possible. I did not come back the same woman that went to Cuba.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
It was it was definitely, and that's why it's taken me a while to continue to develop it. I spoke to documentary filmmakers, and I had one say, Arleen, why do you think it takes documentaries sometimes years, decades to be made? Sometimes you just have to put things down because you're not just filming a scripted film. Like, this is your like literally, this is your life. You're opening up your soul to bear it.
Yeah.
And so much stuff came up for me. I did EMDR treatment for trauma prior to going.
Mm-hmm.
While I was there, a lot of triggers came up.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I had some tools.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, I ended up in the hospital that following Friday.
How come?
I was so dehydrated,
Oh.
and I didn't eat, you know, not that I didn't eat in a healthy way. I wasn't providing the nutrients. I wasn't doing the self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so humid over there, and I'm not great about drinking water.
Mm.
So I think between my nervous system, my digestive system, everything, plus all the trauma that came up, I had very, very, very bad stomach pain. And I ended up in the hospital.
Mm.
It was all digestive,
Mm.
really bad,
Mm.
really bad.
And you're okay now?
I
Yeah.
am, yeah.
Okay.
But when I look back now, I'm like, wow, I didn't know, because when I was in it, trying to get everything, filmed day by day according to the schedule that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm such an A type.
Yeah.
And although I've never directed a film, I thought I, was a director. Well, I guess I am directing the film, but, I definitely wanted everything to be, go according to schedule, because I wanted to make sure that we had certain scenes before my crew of 2 people left.
Right. So would you say that the forgiveness, what I heard you say is about the huge amount of trauma that came up after you were, like while you were there, that you had already been addressing before, like kind of preparing yourself for it. So I'm interested in hearing, had you been doing the forgiveness work before? Had you been in a practice? Did it get accentuated when you were there? And then when you came back, did you say, okay, so I've got to do these steps? Like how, if there's somebody watching this, nobody's trauma is the same trauma. Everybody processes trauma very uniquely. And it's there, it's in the cells, it's cellular. So what has been your process in really addressing the forgiveness?
Well, for me, I first had to identify what was I angry at, what resentments I had.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't allow myself to feel for many, 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 many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I used outside stuff as Band-Aids.
Yes.
And I seeked outside of myself as my Band-Aids.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that prideful woman with all this armor, doing like this to my heart, I did not want to admit that I was sad, that I was angry. And so the work that I started doing in 2006, the inner work, beautiful community shared with me some tools of how to work through resentments, and that the resentments were actually what was keeping me in that shame,
Mm.
that shame, that the guilt,
Mm-hmm.
Anger,
Mm.
jealousy, greed, all of it,
Mm.
gluttony, like all of that really was coming from this bitter root, as we say in my spiritual practice. It was like this bitter root.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am very neutral. So I started imagining this forgiveness work as going to the root of the bitterness and just excavating it from the root.
Mm-hmm.
And all these outside things that I was using to numb and to use as my Band-Aid, so you wouldn't see the gaping wounds. Let me just cover them up with like these little Band-Aids, but like I'm oozing everywhere. So when I was introduced to, there's a way to work through these resentments. You know, who am I angry at, or what am I angry about, and what was the exact thing that made me angry?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did this affect my life?
Mm-hmm.
And then what was my part in it? I could not see my part.
Can you talk more about that? Because I feel like that's a
Okay,
really
let's
difficult.
let's talk about that.
Yeah, because I feel like that's really challenging for people to acknowledge that in every situation, they have some part.
Okay. The one for me, the big one, that when I wrote who I was angry at,
Mm-hmm.
what was the offense, right? What was the
Yeah.
cause?
Yeah.
What did it affect in my life?
Mm-hmm.
How did it manifest in my life? And then when I got to the last column of my part, I, even talking about it now, I
Mm-hmm.
started crying so much, and I was so angry. And the person that I was working with, when we met, I yelled at her, and I said, at the top of my lungs, I said, "You cannot tell me that I have a part in this."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh. Who I was resentful towards? My stepfather.
Mm.
Why? Because he molested me from 5 to 11 years old. We've been able to say, finally, we were able to say 5 because I finally asked my mom in my 20s, how old was I when I got scarlet fever? And she said 5. So that's how I know that it was around 5 that it started, because I remember looking at my hands, and I was peeling the skin. And so that's one of the ways that children disassociate.
Yes.
And so that's how we've been able to track it to 5. So
Mm.
that was the offense, right? The molestations.
Sorry.
And how did that affect my life? And I listed all that. And I went to town. I mean, I had like a whole page full of how that affected my life.
Yeah.
So you could only imagine why I was so angry and screaming at her, because I was a child. Like, what could I possibly, what was my part in that? And she looked at me, and with a very loving tone, and she took my hand. She said, "Honey, your part is that you continued abusing yourself
Mm.
and recreating that trauma." And when she told me that, it was like that matrix moment for me. I realized that I didn't cause it, and I'm able to have the anger, right? I'm able to experience, like, for the first time, I was able to really experience the anger.
Right.
Remember, up until now, I'm numbing. So you wouldn't know what was happening to me in my childhood, right? So the armor's on, and for the first time now, I'm able to experience the anger from an authentic, whole place.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
all the years of therapy, and I went to therapy for many years. I was never consistent because I wasn't ready to be vigorously honest. But I went to therapy since I was in my teens. And we would always focus on the childhood stuff, but we never walked through what was my part. And then
Right.
we never discussed forgiveness.
Yes.
It was always to discuss what happened and
Mm-hmm.
how that affected me, and tools that I could use to not repeat the behavior. But there was something missing in that equation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just walked you through my breakthrough moment, that from that moment on, because that was a big one for me.
It's
That was
huge.
that was a big one. That's a lot of trauma. I heard
So much trauma.
Dr. Rabo. He was a very, very cathartic person in my life, just in my journey to being to wholeness. And he said to me, he goes, because I was very dismissive. I'm like, but you know, it happened so long ago and I've done so much work around it. And he said, if it just happens once, it's enough to the trauma that it causes in the brain,
Yes.
enough to literally derail the natural development of the brain, the synapses, all of that. Enough. It's like once. It's like, and this happened to you repeatedly.
Mm.
And you never said anything. On top of that, you never said anything. So the trauma on top of like you being so secretive, and then everyone thinking you have like, I'm a cheerleader, I'm fun, I'm happy. He was like, it's a miracle that you're alive. And so that is when people tell me like about this forgiveness stuff, when I work with people and I take them through that and I share my story, they're like, wow.
Right.
And you're right. And no two traumas are the same. And Wendy, I've shared this with you. Every day I make a decision whether I want to forgive or not. It's not a one-time deal.
Right. Right.
You know, today I might wake up and that trauma might really be triggered for me.
Yeah.
And I might be really angry at my stepfather today. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, where did that? So it's a daily choice. It's a daily choice. But I'm so grateful that I finally was able to forgive my stepfather.
Yeah.
Everyone involved. And really, from like every fiber in my body, I have so much compassion for him, but it first had to start with me feeling my anger.
Right.
And then me going through the process of forgiveness, the grieving, all of it.
I really appreciate what you're sharing. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And I know too that that experience formed the magnificent woman that you are, but it is not fun to walk through that. That is that's a lot of shiz to walk through. And I appreciate what you're sharing about how it's different stages, because those of us that are on a spiritual path sometimes misunderstand and think that in a second you can decide, I forgive you. And yes, there's that inner decision, like you said. It is a daily decision to decide over and over again to be free, to be free, to release, to let go, to set yourself free. And the grieving, the anger, the sadness, the acceptance, those are non-linear stages that I know you take people through when you coach them, so that they can have a vision for their life that is unencumbered by the burden of holding themselves and other people hostage, right?
Right. And to add to that, the empowerment, you mentioned that, I said the empowerment that comes from the act of forgiveness. The empowerment that I felt is actually the what is it? It's what propelled me into continuing on this path of forgiveness. I was like, you know, once I worked through all that, I was like, you know, like my shoulders started, you know, I didn't have that shame, because you could only imagine all the shame that comes with that, right? And so when I was able to forgive myself for recreating the abuse, right? Because that's what I saw. My part was that I recreate. So then to have that moment of clarity, and then I have the decision. I don't have to recreate my trauma anymore. I could pick very healthy men. I could learn how to date myself and not date anyone for a while. It's so empowering. And I always tell women, especially young women, it is so empowering when you're able to say this, I was a victim of this, but now I get to rewrite that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I reparent myself?
Mm-hmm.
And the empowerment that comes from that self-love.
Yeah.
Right? But it has to start with self-forgiveness. I can't forgive someone else if I haven't done the forgiving myself. I can't love someone else if I don't love myself. Right? That's codependency.
Right. And it's so right. It's so natural.
Like, I'm gonna forgive you. You're fine. Like, it's okay that you did that. But then, like, you don't forgive yourself when maybe you fall short. So that is something that I definitely, when I work with people, I share with why the forgiveness component is such an important piece to the visioning component. And you just touched on that. I've seen many people that are, that have manifested, because I think God has given us the brain is such a beautiful, powerful, I don't know what we want to call it, but
Mechanism.
yes, it's so beautiful and powerful that yes, I do believe that we could manifest even without doing, without doing the forgiveness work. I do believe that we can still manifest. I'm not saying we can't, because
Thank you for saying that. That's so helpful, because so many times, I'm sure you have this with your clients well too. There's again this misperception, right? That if I'm not completely perfect, if I haven't gotten everything out yet, then I can't have joy or I can't manifest. And it's just like you build the plane as you're flying it. Like there's things that you do, like you heal and you keep healing. We live in an evolutionary universe. We're constantly evolving and growing. So thank you for speaking to that.
yeah, because that's my own experience too. There's many things that manifested, and I didn't even have a spiritual connection for many years. And I definitely had a lot of resentments, and things did manifest. So I know from my own personal experience, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I had my spiritual awakening,
Mm-hmm.
and then the forgiveness component, which is such a huge component to my spiritual practice,
Right.
then when the visions that I started seeing were from this place of wholeness.
Right.
And what I mean by that is I no longer made that thing, for example, earning 6 figures, right? When I earn 6 figures, then I'm going to be able to say, like, see, I made it, right? I'm going to prove to all you guys that I have resentments towards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Different. When I got the job, my story, but I got that beautiful opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
It was no longer from this place of I'm not enough, but when I have this, then I'll feel whole.
Yeah.
So that forgiveness component for me, and the exercises that we do, it clears away, it like clears so that the frequency that needs to be downloaded is clear.
Yes.
And when I clear my frequency and I'm able to be clear for that, for the download, I call it the download. I want to be clear for that download because I want it all. I want it all. I tell my friend, I'm like, I'm so greedy. Like, I don't want God's crown. I want it all. Like, I just want it all. And so for me, I've noticed a difference between when I have visioned, just my vision's completely shifted once I started doing that inner work around forgiveness. And the other side of forgiveness that actually is a big one that I have to pray for on a daily basis is humility. Humility is that component,
Yes.
that right? Pride is at the bitter root of a resentment, and humility is that root of forgiveness.
Yeah.
So I have to pray for a lot of humility, because it doesn't just come to this woman, to this Cuban woman. It's good for a lot of it. Oh,
Wow, you've shared so much. The tools, the technology that you offer clients and those that are close to you are so helpful. They're transformational tools. So I know that you do retreats in France, and that you had, I believe you had another one that you were planning before this. I like to call it this imposed inner retreat called the quarantine. Go ahead. Were you going to say
what's
something?
funny about that is the retreat was definitely a vision, and I'm a vision board. Like, I used to laugh at people that used to do all this stuff, by the way. By the way, for whoever's watching, I used to make so much fun of people like me on so many levels. So there's that. So the vision for the retreat in France, I got that years ago. And thank God for people that come, like such as yourself, that say, okay, we're gonna do this Facebook Live. I'm like, okay, I'm sure. And Sarah Phillip asked me to co-facilitate the retreat with her, and it was amazing, breakthrough. Just so many beautiful things happened, magical on that retreat. But when we came back from the retreat, and I'll never forget, we were on the drive back from the airport when we landed in Milwaukee, and she wanted to do one this year because we came off such a high. It was so successful in the sense that women really found it to be so empowering and healing. And for us, it was so empowering and healing. And I said, I don't get the sense that we're going to do it next year. And I felt so bad because I know that she was so excited. And I was like, I don't get the sense. Let's maybe 2021. And plus she was planning a wedding for this year. So when all this started happening with COVID-19, I said, remember when I said, I don't know, I have a feeling that we're not supposed to be doing this in 2020. Here it is, because we were planning to do it in September. So there's no way I would have been marketing to go abroad during the summer. So there you have it. Speaking of visions, right? Thank God for discernment.
It's so wonderful that you talk about all of that. So helpful. It's so helpful for everybody who's watching this to know that it's a process and you can still manifest while you're building the plane. It just reminds me of that, the field of dreams, build it and they will come. And that it's a process of continually unfolding. So how can people work with you, Arleen? How do they find you? Please tell them how they can find you.
Well, on my Instagram at Arleen Milian. I also am on LinkedIn.
Great.
And it's Arleen, Arleen Milian. Many people try to look for me under ENE, and that's the American way of spelling Arleen. And
yes.
So they could find me.
Awesome.
I would love to work with you.
Well, anybody who's considering it, you would be completely blessed to work with Arleen and to know her heart. You have such a beautiful heart, and you are an inspired and an inspiring woman, soul-centered, heart-centered, faithful woman. And I am very grateful for your presence in my life, and I'm so grateful that we had this opportunity to dialogue. And for those that are watching on Facebook, and for those that will receive the replay of this, thank you for joining us. Did you want to say something? Were you going to say something?
I just want to say thank you, sister.
You're so welcome.
Thank you that you are such a light for us in this world, and that you have that just that natural gift to empower others, to encourage. Like, you're like the encourager. So I really, seriously, that's one of your gifts. You are an encourager. And there needs to be more women out there encouraging each other, being each
Yeah.
other's rah-rah, right? When you win, I win. And so thank you for being visible and for being so generous to ask me to be your, you know, one of your guests after Bobby Kennedy Jr. I mean, I'm like, gosh, like I get to say.
You're so funny. Yeah, and well, for me, you're so welcome, because it just felt so congruent for me with what this master series is about. It's about inspiration and empowerment. It's about information. And, you know, I'm hopeful that Bobby and I will have a do-over, because the internet was so crazy and everything he had to say was so important. And you're important to me, and what you have to share is so valuable. And I see who you are. I see you. And I really appreciate your acknowledgement. And I just want you to know I really see you and I support you in just soaring and helping people recognize that through forgiveness they will find empowerment, they will find freedom, and they will be able to really anchor. I use kind of that woo language, but they'll be able to birth a vision for their lives. And I believe it's in your bio: live a life you love, and then be able to ground it, to earth it, because now more than ever we need people that are willing. I mean, this pandemic, or this plandemic, this experience, life will never be the same again. And it's not, I mean, my heart goes out to all the people that are suffering and have suffered and may continue to suffer. I wish them peace. I'm here, you're here to help them remember who they are, their wholeness, and remember that they have choice point. And for anybody who's lost a loved one or a friend, my heart and my thoughts and my prayers are with you. And I also believe that this is an opportunity for people to begin again, to renew and refresh and restore their being, and to step out, because things are going to be different. Nothing is going to be the same again. So if you've been in a position, and I'm not encouraging anybody to be fired or any of that stuff at all, but what I'm present to and what I'm aware of in my conversations with my clients is that people are saying, well, I've been waiting for so long to step out and do something, and I feel like now is the time. Like, now I'm being given this space and this time to build my platform, to write that book, to start that business, to do something. So it's people like you, Arleen, who model what it's like to move through such immense trauma and be triumphant, not to stay in the trauma, which is a part of the process. When you are healing, there's no shortcut, and you model that so magnificently. And
Thank you.
You're such a stand for women and for all sisters. And so I really appreciate and love you. And I'm glad that you have been here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And one more thing that just came to mind when you were sharing really quickly is, I heard someone recently say, I'm taking this time, the time of, that we're all in quarantine, as a holy time. And it made me think, this is, in my opinion, this is a time where this essentials and non-essentials, I'm taking an inventory on what are the essentials, or what were the perceived essentials, right? And what do I want to rise out of this? How do I want to rise out of this?
Exactly.
And so this time has really been, for me, really evaluating, or not evaluating, but really taking an inventory, like assessing, like, okay, Arleen, what were the things that you thought were the essentials that are really not?
Yeah.
And the vision part of it is really, during this time, what I've been focusing on. That's really what's kept me inspired to continue looking up towards my North Star, to keep me going. Because otherwise, if I just look at the news and my friends that are out of work and the death tolls and everything that's happening, it was not a good place for me to be in. And so I took out my vision boards and my journals, and I said, okay, this is where I'm at today. What actions can I take towards my visions? Because as you and I both know, Wendy, the visions are not about getting the house and the blah, 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 and the 7 figures. It's not, at least for me, it's not about that. My vision and your vision, when we're able to tap into that divine vision that we're each given, it's for the universe.
Yes.
It's for everyone. It's not just for it to serve me. At
Right.
least that's the vision for me. Is my vision does encompass my brothers and sisters on this planet.
Yes.
It's not for me to earn 7 figures. Yes, me earn 7 figures, but I also I have a generous heart.
Yes,
and so God knows he could trust me with 7 figures, that I'm not this, that I'm also going to help the marginalized. And you're right, women and children, that is my mission in life.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
When I share with people the vision, it's not just about you getting. It's how does your vision also serve
Absolutely.
brothers and sisters on this planet?
Absolutely.
So anyways.
Okay. Thank you. That's absolutely, thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Again, my guest has been Arleen Milian, and it's ARLEEN MILIAN, and you can find her on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and I am Wendy Silvers, and that's SILVERS. And you can find me, we're also on Facebook, and you can, for the master series that I'm producing, you can go to Million Mamas, MAMAS, movement.org, because the Wendy Silvers site is under construction. And Mondays through Fridays, I offer no cost reading, a meditative reading, meditation, and spoken word on my other page, which is facebook.com/Wendy Silvers, SILVERS, SOUL channel, CHANNEL. So thank you for being with us. We both wish you a beautiful and glorious day, and stay healthy, be well, and find joy in the midst of this, and look for things to be grateful for, and you will have more to be grateful for. Yes. Blessings. Blessings.
And forgive.
And forgive. Yes. Forgive. Give forth. Forgive. Give forth. Okay. Thank you.